I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Linda Kaczynski. Linda has spent over 45 years in higher ed IT, starting as a student worker and climbing the ranks as a programmer, analyst, database administrator, and the director of student information systems. Today, she serves as the business analyst and liaison between IT and administrative departments at Lawrence Technical University, helping teams find and deploy the absolute best solutions for student and institutional success. In this episode, Linda pulls back the curtain on the often messy and untold reality on higher ed technical implementations. We dive into her firsthand experience on spending a year trying to make a failing platform work, and she breaks down the hidden costs of that experience, not just the financial implications, but the loss of team time, trust, and momentum. Linda shares the exact red flags she now looks for when evaluating tech partners, what truly successful deployment feels like, and what it actually means to have a vendor support you even after deployment. Whether an IT leader or a campus administrator, Linda's hard-earned wisdom is a masterclass in how to navigate institutional technology transitions without losing your team along the way. But before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe to the show to stay up to date on the latest in data-informed institutional success. Linda, thank you so much for joining me on Next Practices. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Me too.
Well,
I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's get started by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, your institution, and your work in higher ed.
Okay. I work at Lawrence Tech University in Southfield, Michigan. It is a private university, and we do a lot of hands-on focus for technology, focus on the STEM, but using it in real-life applications. We were founded in 1932 with the help of Henry and Edsel Ford. So that was kind of an interesting fact. We really like to have small classes, very innovative. A lot of students work with faculty on projects and research. And so before I came here, I've been here 10 years. Before I came here, I was at another university and for almost 25 years. So I've been in higher ed for about 45 years, working in IT and working with the student information system.
That's a really storied career, 45 years in higher ed. I'm sure you've seen a lot of change over that time frame. What has been the most, I know this is like different than what we talked about ahead of time, but I'm curious, and I think it would be a loss not to ask you, like, what are some of the most interesting or transformative changes you've seen in IT over that period? Because I could just think that it must be just so much change.
Yes. I was just talking about that the other day with one of my coworkers who's a lot younger than I was. And I said in one of my, in high school, when I started programming, it was kind of a weird new thing that math students could do on the side, right? And we wrote in Fortran. We did IBM punch cards. And so in school, when I went through college for it, we had to do decks of cards and then submit them in the afternoon at a desk. They were driven over to the main headquarters where the servers were, run through, the output was given and wrapped around the cards, and you got it the next morning, only to find out you forgot a semicolon. So you had to punch that card again, resubmit it that afternoon, wait till the next morning. So there was definitely no last minute work. And you tended not to do things progressively like we do now. Like, I'll make a change, run it. Okay, make another change, run it. There was no time for that. I actually saw a computer that was all the switches for ones and zeros. That's how you programmed it. I did never use that, but that was a pretty old piece of history that most people have never seen. Yeah, I went through, we were so excited when we got a daisy wheel printer that actually submitted the lines of programming. It stored it and you could save it that way. Went from terminals to regular PCs. I remember going to a conference and people were talking about, I have 17 tabs at the end of the day that I have to close. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. How could you ever work doing so many multitasks? Because we would run a program in Fortran to compile it and it could take an hour. And because you were in a terminal, there was nothing else you could do for that hour that had to do, on the computer. So you waited. Everything was a lot slower than what it is now. So yeah, lots and lots of changes.
Yeah, the remarkable thing is the speed in which you can do things, and that's just continuing
Mhm.
to ramp up with AI, I'm sure.
Yes. And somebody actually at a vendor at one of a conference described it as the World Wide Web. And instead of the wide world web or whatever, he had it backwards.
Yeah.
And people were going, what is that? It was, we had no idea
Yeah.
how that was going to change the world.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see the whole transition from cards all the way to now, and to see that build on each other, and like the purpose of
Mm-hmm.
it versus like coming in midstream and just knowing this is just like the technology and how it is. To be able to see that evolution is pretty remarkable. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that little bit of experience. So you have a very storied experience. You've been working in higher ed for a very long time. You have
Mm-hmm.
seen information technology change and transition. We're going to talk a little bit today about your more recent experiences
Mm-hmm.
at your institution, getting technology to those who need it so that they can use data to inform the institutional and student success work that they're doing on your campus. Before we get into like the details around your technology deployment experience and your vast wisdom on how to lead out technology deployment and what you've learned, I'd love to know a little more about um, what are some of the challenges and opportunities on your campus that you're using data and technology to solve for as an institution?
So a lot of it focuses on retention, of course. How do we reach the students that maybe need a little extra help but haven't reached out? We also, it's finances are huge right now, especially in these times. And so trying to get the most use out of the products that you have so that you're not buying new products and to fit the needs of all the different constituents on campus. And that becomes very difficult because everyone has different needs, and yet there's only one big budget that we can call from.
And I think so many institutions over the last decade have had almost like tech stack creep, where there is an explosion of different softwares and vendors and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities and point solutions and institutions. And I know this is not just true for higher ed, but I think it's true for any corporate entity, amass tons
Mm-hmm.
of technology. And now I know a lot of institutions are taking a moment to sort of reevaluate that technology and determine how they can consolidate some of those point solutions, how they can bring those costs down, and how they can get teams across campus a little bit more aligned and unified in the technology that they have because of budget constraints, but also just technology overload.
Yes. Trying to integrate all those systems together can be really complicated. And then something changes in one and it affects all the others. So trying to get the most out of each product that we have and eliminating products that maybe provide us something that one of the other ones could also provide if we just implemented that a little bit deeper. And so constantly reevaluating where we're at with this particular product or that particular product, or licensing when it comes up is a good time to look to see, do we use this product in the way that we intended? Or is there something else that we have that could be enhanced to do the same thing and cut costs that way? And just IT staff, we can't keep hiring more IT people, just like we can't hire more, additional administrators or, department admins. So we have to try to keep that knowledge and learning curves down so that we can make the best use of our IT employees. We get burnout too. And then we miss things because it's constant vigilance along with, implementing new things.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think too, as you're talking about underutilization of existing platforms, but I think also examining why that platform is being underutilized, or in some cases, I know we were talking in our earlier conversation about spending a lot of time and sort of banging your head against the wall, trying to make a platform that you invested in work. And that
Yeah.
sometimes you have to kind of call it and cut your losses and move on. Do you mind talking a little bit about that piece of managing technology? What did those kinds of experiences actually cost your institution, not just in budget, but like you were saying, in terms of like your team's time and trust and like willingness to invest in more
Mhm.
software? I know that that's the
Yes.
other side of the coin, is that it's using the software you purchase, but then also knowing when it's time to let go of
Mhm.
technology that maybe isn't serving your institution anymore.
Yeah. So we had a product that we purchased and we expected it to be implemented within a year. And during that year, there was so much frustration with whether just trying to get it started and getting it configured. And it wasn't just that it was difficult to get all the pieces working together, but it was a constant, oh, we didn't know we needed that too. Oh, we didn't know we needed to build this server over here. Oh, we didn't know we had to look at all of these different settings in order to get this to work. And what do these settings mean? And we didn't always get the answers. Sometimes it was really frustrating to see all the steps that we had to do that we didn't know we had to do. And we didn't understand why we needed to do it or how we were going to maintain it once we went live. Um, after, during that time, we started to question whether the product was even going to work for us and how hard was it going to be to maintain it. It almost looked like we were going to need to hire additional people in IT just to keep the product running. So we had to really look at what are we gaining, if it even works, and what is it going to cost us. And it costs not just the things that you talked about with finance um, but it was a lot of morale. Nobody wanted to work on the project anymore. It was one of those dreaded things when the meeting came up, everybody wanted to be sick. And then confidence. Are we even going to be able to do this? And then are we going to have a product that works? That confidence. And what if it doesn't? How is that going to reflect back on the implementation team, both the administration, the departments, and the IT team? And will they trust us in anything else that we do? So, one of the things that's worse than not having a product is having a product that gives false information and misleads people. And we were really concerned about that.
You just described so many hidden costs. I think a lot of times when people go through a technology purchase, and myself included, we are thinking and focused on the cost of the platform, the cost of additional licenses, maybe the cost of, upfront deployment. But you named so many hidden costs and so many like
Yeah.
surprising resources that maybe you weren't anticipating that you were going to have to add. There's both a physical, like a cost, but also like a physical time, like time cost and financial cost as well. After living through that, what did you learn and what do you take with you when you're looking for new technologies, and what are some of the red flags that you're watching out for when you enter a procurement process?
One of our biggest lessons that we learned is that IT needs to be involved from the very beginning, like the demos, even. Um, we in IT have a different perspective than the rest of the university has, which is good because it's related to our job, not theirs. But we see different things and we know what questions to ask, not just about implementing, but about support and where is the data coming from? Where is the data stored? There's a lot of things like that that departments would not think to ask. And but it impacts implementation and everything going forward. We all worry about data security. And a lot of times vendors do not talk about that in their presentations, but the IT people know we need to follow up on authentication and security and where's the data stored and what does the vendor have access to. So IT needs to be involved from the very beginning. Red flags I've seen in various implementations throughout my career was when a vendor says, "Oh yeah, we have reports, but we can't show you those right now, but we have them." And then you find out that the reports are not anything that you would use. Or yeah, it all comes with this. It's a turnkey product. And then someone says something, they go, "Oh yeah, that's just a little script that your DBA has to write." And so you start questioning the little script is actually an integration that's full blown connecting systems. So I think that a lot of the red flags can be avoided by having IT in the room right from the start. Um, one of the things we found was that the product that was being demoed was not the version we were going to get. It was the one with all the bells and whistles, but we had said from the start we weren't buying the bells and whistles. We wanted the basic product to start out. We found out one time, we didn't even know till we were halfway in the product, that the things that we saw were not the things we were getting. And they were key items for what we wanted to do. So definitely ensure that what you're being shown is what you're going to get. And oh, another thing was layers of knowledge among the vendor support. So we know that we are always being shown a product by the marketing team, right? They're going to sell it. But it's really important when you have questions during that process before you've purchased to be able to have access to the IT or technical support so that they can actually give you good answers, accurate answers for the questions that you have behind the scenes. So I think that's really important. If the vendor's not willing to let you talk to anyone like that, then that should be a red flag.
And when you're working with vendors, do you find that it's common for this experience to get access to these kinds of information and questions, or do you find it really challenging? And can you share an experience where you did have an option to kind of have access to the information you need?
Yeah. So a lot of times in a vendor implementation, they'll ask for connections to your student information system, let's say, so they can pull the data, or they ask for exports of the data and then they load it in the system and you don't really get to see how it works until it's live or you're in the testing mode and you don't know if they interpreted your data correctly or not. So we in implementing our new advising system from Civitas, we were able to work with the technical people who were actually building the product for us based on our information. I gave them SQL scripts on how we pull data and what it means, and they incorporated all of that within the product. That's the kind of technical support that you should have when you're implementing a big project, especially one that means carries so much value to the university. So we had access to those people, daily conversations at times because we had a really quick timeline. And the working back and forth of here's what we count as athletes, let's say, here's how we identify athletes in our system. And then they take that, put it in, and then we test it and validate. And we're like, well, no, we forgot. Maybe we forgot to tell you something, or maybe you misinterpreted something, but we need this tweak and this change. That is so key to making the product not only work accurately, but building trust between the vendor and the university. And if you don't have that trust, it's going to be hard to trust the product once it goes live.
Yeah, especially when it comes to data and knowing where the data came from and if the data is accurate
Mhm.
and then taking action on that data. It's imperative that you know that the data is high quality and that it's being integrated appropriately and it's something that you can trust. I'm curious, you mentioned that you had a really tight timeline. Do you mind telling me more about what was causing that tight timeline and how you're able to work together with Civitas Learning in a
Mhm.
tight time frame?
Yeah.
I yeah, I've heard it was really fast, and so I'm curious what was driving that, and then what that looked like, if you don't mind kind of walking us through that experience.
So the product we had purchased at first had said it would be a year implementation, between 12 months and 18 months. We were 12 months in and we had nothing to show. We had a lot of time and effort in setup, but no finished product and no understanding of how it worked. So, in order to justify switching to a different product 1 year into the process, we needed to give our campus a finished product to try to meet that 18-month timeline. So we ended up working with Civitas and came up with, I think it was a 6 to 8 week timeline implementation. And we met it. And we met it. Because of that, we were able to convince, we gained back the trust of all our constituents because it looked like we had failed in that first year. And they weren't sure if we really knew what we were doing, especially when we're like, okay, we're going to abandon a year's worth of work and start something new. Um, that's a scary step.
I was going to just say, I think a lot of people are afraid to admit failure
Mhm.
and cut their losses. And I think that that is exactly often the thing that needs to happen. And so, like, yeah, it's scary, but remarkable that your team recognized the need and made the push and still delivered in the time frame. And I think that that's
Mhm.
really is part of it. Like, seeing that this isn't going to work for us, much better to see that it's not going to work for you and cut your losses as soon as you see it and move to something that's going to work than to kind of just like stay the course because that's what you committed to and you're trying to save
Yeah,
face or whatever other reason people do those things.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about in an earlier conversation that
Mhm.
you also said is that the real test of a vendor isn't just the implementation process, but what happens afterwards. So, what does that look like for you at your institution? Why does it matter more than people think? I think this might be one of those other sort of hidden costs of
Mhm.
technology is that we're focused on the deployment and then don't think through what happens after that. So, can you talk a little bit more about why that's an important test and what you would expect to see or have happen with the best vendors that you work with?
Mhm. So there's always missing, there's always something surprising when you go live with a product. Uh, Little things like, oh, I thought that was going to show this, and it isn't. Um, I thought it would do this, and it didn't. And so a lot of times you purchase a product and you get it, it gets implemented, and you are sort of like cut off from the original people that helped work on this project, that built that relationship with you from the vendor, that understand what it is your requirements are. You're cut off from that team and you're put into the maintenance team, support team, who you then have to start all over again with what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you are. What ideally, and what we found was that that relationship that you build during that implementation process, they get to understand exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. When you go live and there's little glitches or whatever, it is so much easier to go back to that team and say, hey, this was supposed to do this, but it didn't. And so they go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And they're familiar with your product, all your changes, and what you want done. What I liked about Civitas, or what we liked about Civitas Learning, was that they have a different model. Once you go live, you're not automatically switched over to the maintenance mode. of support, you get access still to some of the same key people, your project managers, that were done during the implementation. So if you have questions, and I can't remember, but it seemed like it was a year that we actually got access to them. I can email and say, hey, I have a question about this, or I don't know that this is working, or could we add this still? And be able to talk to the people that already had relationship with us. And that was really important because we already had that rapport going. After that period, when everything seemed to settle down and we had been going for a while, and it's like, yeah, we don't have questions, we're moving through this. Then we got switched over to the maintenance support, and we found that we get the same response time from them and the same amount of support. And it may take them a little bit longer for them to go back and look at all our records and check into things like that. But basically, we haven't had anything critical that was delayed a response. So it's been really good to be able to have that kind of support. It's not just to always sign the contract, now you're done type of thing. Civitas really does care about their Civitas really does care about the people that have purchased their products, and they want to see them successful. And that just seems to make it so much better for all of us.
Yeah, there really is a commitment to partnering, truly partnering with our customers and supporting them throughout the lifetime of their partnership to make sure that they get to
Mm-hmm.
outcomes. And we do that in a variety of ways. And I'm glad to hear that that was a positive experience for you.
Yes.
You've been through a lot of implementations over your long career, and I know we've already
Mm-hmm.
touched maybe on some of these things you would say, but if you could sit down with an IT leader who's 6 months into a project that maybe they're thinking it might be failing, or it smells a little bit fishy to them, what would you
Mm-hmm.
tell them?
Really take a good look at what you're getting and what you're losing by staying with the product. It's not just cost, as you said, but the time that you've put in already, and how much time are you going to need to complete it to the point where you're satisfied with your results? Because it may be a lot longer than what you've already done. Um, think about the trust between your administration, your departments, your IT team, your constituents, including the students. Are they going to be able to trust the product? Um, how much discouragement and morale and insecurity are you going to generate by staying with a product that is really difficult to implement when you don't know what the outcome is going to be? And what is the confidence in your IT team to support the product after it goes live? Because it's not just an implementation. This is hopefully that's the shortest piece of the lifetime of the product. So I would suggest that really consider, do you see an end in sight of all the difficulties? Um, and are you confident it's going to meet your needs? Because if you're not getting what you need now to implement, are you going to get what you need to actually use the product? Um, I think it's really important that you document everything, all your questions, all your the promises that were made, the explanations from all your conversations, meetings, telephone, because if you do need to back out of it, you want that documentation to support getting out of the contract. So you normally can't get out of much. If you sign a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract during implementation, it may be difficult to cut your losses to just a year financially or what time you've put into it unless you have that information. So don't just document the how to's, but document all the information leading up to it. And the other thing I would say is to make the IT an integral part from the beginning to the end, because they just have a different perspective and it will make your life easier if their life works better.
Yeah, we're finding more and more that the IT teams are becoming more prevalent in technology decisions, and we find that when that happens, it's actually a very positive thing
Mhm.
to have them at the table earlier, and we recommend it and suggest it to our customers who are going through this process as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of ground and a lot of
Mhm.
history. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off today?
Um, One of the things I've noticed, like my position is actually a business analyst, and not all universities have that position, but it's really helpful to have someone on your project team who knows both the IT end and the end user side, because it bridges that gap in communication and um, training and specifications, all those things that um, each side has a different perspective on. So one of the recommendations I would also make is if you are in these projects, make sure you have someone who has a viewpoint of both and can work as the liaison.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much, Linda, for your time today. And thank you for coming on Next Practices. It's been really enjoyable speaking with you today.
Thank you. I really appreciated it.